people. If you're new to the live, we appreciate you. My name is Randall. This is the McClures. We react, review, we make fun of, we laugh at stuff. Links are down in the description if you'd like to help support. If you're watching it as a video, we are live Monday through Friday. So come hang out with us. We'd appreciate it. We're going to be checking out, I think his name is Rustlin. He's a Christian. He posts mainly religious content, from my understanding, on YouTube. I've seen a couple of his videos, and we came across this one. Christian pitches Adam22 and Lena the plug on Jesus and monogamy. If you guys don't know who any of these people are, Adam22 is a cuck who watches his wife bang dudes. That's weird shit, bro. That's weird shit. And apparently someone's going to pitch him on the idea of Jesus and monogamy. And I'm curious how this pans out. Adam22 obviously is not religious. He's married to a porn star. He fucks his wife on OnlyFans. So he's not necessarily living a Christian lifestyle for sure. So this might be an interesting conversation.
I'm just perplexed by the motivation.
Basically, just like it's fun. Like I look at my calendar and we're hooking up with a couple of chicks that day, and I'm like, oh wow, what a great Wednesday.
Man, there's just some podcasts most Christians avoid, whether it's because of their content or extremely thirst-trappy thumbnails. Some of these thumbnails are things that would cause most people to just completely abandon the internet. But one of the podcasts most notable and rising through the ranks in this specific niche is the Whatever Podcast. Now, you may have seen what's been going on with Adam22 and his wife. If you haven't, very happy for you. Please don't Google it. But the Whatever Podcast just decided to have Adam22 and his wife on, and my friend Lila Rose was able to loop yours truly into the process. So I drove 4 hours to spend 4 hours on a dumpster fire of a podcast, and then drove 4 hours back, which leads many to my audience here asking, Ruslan, why would you appear on such a podcast? Some people may even be thinking that appearing on a podcast like this could bring some of my audience over and potentially cause them to stumble. Some may even think that Christians even being involved in cultural hot topics like this is just not something we should be doing, as if it's beneath us somehow. And listen, I'm going to unpack all of that and give you guys my reasons with a specific Bible passage on why I decided to appear on this podcast. But first, let me give you some of the highlights from this conversation we had.
I feel like
Well, what he's going to say is, I'm pretty sure we were told to go everywhere and preach the word of Jesus. So if Jesus is going into whorehouses, you should be able to go onto a horror podcast.
the argument against people engaging in sort of non-traditional relationships is kind of weak if you have to instantly pivot into like, well, what about the kids?
Yeah, I think there's a design of how we were created to function in a one man, one woman covenantal arrangement. Now, I think everything outside of that is unhelpful. Mm-hmm. And I think there is something wrong with, I think porn is a total net negative to society. I'm not sure how many of you guys is like fans that watch you regularly, you've met in person, and how this affects them. But I mean, Andrew Huberman did a whole long thing about what happens when someone consumes. They open up a feedback loop that's intended to be consumed with someone else. So I think it's very hard to make the argument that is helping people as much as it's harming people. It's keeping a lot of these guys regressed. It's keeping, I mean, the incel community.
I think they keep editing the word corn because we're not supposed to say it on YouTube with the P in front.
The red pill stuff. A lot of the people that rail against you guys probably secretly go and watch this stuff, which is a really bizarre thing. We've seen it with the Fresh and Fit girls. So I don't know if, as a net positive, this is something, remove the kids, like this is something that you think is actually adding to human flourishing.
But everyone tries to always focus on like the extreme watcher, but I think that there's like very healthy consumers, which are probably the majority with consumption. And like, I don't think that like women consume too, and I don't think they're sitting around all day just, I mean, we both consume it at a very moderate level. I don't know.
You guys created, so it's a bit different.
Why we feel comfortable doing it again, even after having been so massively in the news over the past couple of months. You know,
Adam, you don't see the increase in opening a relationship up to risk, though. We're just giving you statistics. 90% of relationships, you guys are functionally in a non-monogamous relationship, even though privately you may not be. It seems like you guys have something special, and it seems like you guys have a child and a beautiful family. You decided to get married. You decided to say the vows, and it seems like there's this roaring going on inside of you guys where you have certain values and you have certain things that you want for your kids in this unit, yet at the same time, I'm just perplexed by the motivation.
I don't see those things to be contradictory, that we want to have a great life for our kids and stuff, and then we also are willing to, do
I'm talking about for your
things.
own union. Like it seems like this increases the likelihood of this potentially ending, which I don't want for you guys.
We've never really discussed it in those terms. I don't think of it that way, and I think if anything, it kind of made our sex life a little bit more exciting for a period of time. Just the fact that I had a little bit of competition, a little bit more of a reason to go hard, I don't necessarily think that's the worst thing.
There's
honestly.
a freedom inside of a covenantal relationship to try things and to explore and to do things that if you're out here and you're raw dogging it, you don't know who has what and all the stipulations that go into that.
Everyone's trying to figure out how to use Chat GPT for their side hustle. But did you know there's a
No, we're not.
That life, there's a freedom you have, there's a protection you have, there's a trust that you have in a relationship where it's just you and the other person.
And that's why I do think that the sexual revolution has overall been probably negative for most women, because the truth is that as a man, you can have sex with any woman and, bust it in 5-10 minutes and you're good. You just had a good time. Whereas for a woman, realistically, the first time you have sex with a guy, you have like an infinitesimal percentage chance that you're going to, and you're realistically only going to end up having positive experiences by sleeping with the same guy over and over and really learning how to connect with him.
It's called marriage.
Totally.
That's the beauty
And
of a
I get
marriage.
that. I also just think women, should feel free to do what they want to do. But I also, in terms of what I would tell, any woman in my life, what I would recommend for them, I would say, hold your in high esteem.
Porn aside, if my daughter was wanted to explore her, I don't think that's a bad thing. I don't think that's unethical.
But you guys just both acknowledge you wouldn't want your daughter to do that.
It wouldn't be
It's
my
not my
ideal
first choice,
thing.
but
So
it's
isn't that a
also-
bit inconsistent, though, that creates something that you wouldn't want your offspring? We want our kids to be better than us, so why would you want them to do that? If they're aspiring for you
I feel like
to.
what I'm doing allows my daughter to have a better life. we're going to be able to put her through private school because I have the life that I have now.
She's equating a better life to having more money. That's not what's going to make your life better.
wouldn't have been able to give her that without that.
My dad was a social worker, and for sure he wanted me to be something bigger and better than a social worker. It's like you always want your kid to do better than you would want to do. I would love if my daughter was, some famed, artist or something. That would be amazing. Do I necessarily think that that's in the cards? I mean, that's kind of a roll of the dice. You never know what your kid's going to get.
How much
into.
is it? How much is enough? financially? At what point does it just you I feel like you guys intrinsically know this isn't helpful.
No, I think it's as long as you're having fun.
Yeah.
Whenever we go and
But is there a
porn in
dollar
a day,
amount?
it's like
No, it's not a dollar
it's
amount.
basically just it's fun. I look at my calendar and we're hooking up with a couple of chicks that day, and I'm like, oh wow, what a great Wednesday. It's
But
very
it's
profitable
if it
and fun.
didn't feel good anymore.
Yeah.
There are
I
times
mean,
where
meth feels good.
sometimes we have more sex on camera than we do off camera, and those weeks I don't feel as connected to him. I'm like, wow, we've just been working so much. I don't feel like we've been fostering our relationship. And in those weeks, if we didn't take that break and that pause and talk about it and reconnect, then I could see myself being I don't want to do this anymore because it's interfering with our relationship.
And it does feel good, but the downside of meth is much worse.
Do you think there's any
having
down-
actually done it, it's not that great. Whereas the downside of having, with some girl on camera is that at the end of the money, you get a bunch of money in the mail. So to me,
In the interim,
very different.
you guys don't know potential consequences down the road.
I mean, we've been doing it for a long time, and I wouldn't really say that we've encountered many negative consequences from it. Just a bunch of fun and cash.
And those weren't even the best moments, in my opinion. The best moment in this conversation, I'm going to save till the end. But first, I wanted to share what this reminded me of. Back in November, I had the amazing opportunity of going to Israel for the very first time. And I got to go to the Sea of Galilee, where Jesus launches into his public ministry. I got to experience the layout of Israel and get a newfound respect of how far Jesus' hometown Nazareth is to the city of Galilee, a small port city where many
I don't know what tangent he's going on right now, but as far as Adam 22 and his wife goes, it is interesting how they can say, on one hand, we wouldn't want our daughter to do this. We would encourage women in our life to hold on to their chastity. But yet we're going to be in the corn industry because it's fun and profitable. Like, it just, their logic doesn't mesh up.
Many of the disciples were actually fishermen. And it is here that Jesus encounters them and he's engaging with them and he's telling them that he's going to make them fishers of men. In Matthew 5, verse 13, Jesus tells the crowd, "You are the salt of the earth, but what good is salt if it lost its flavor? Can you make it salty again? It will be thrown out and trampled underfoot as worthless." Having the opportunity to go to Israel and specifically Galilee, where a lot of these folks were fishermen, I got to understand the purpose of salt. And salt, in this context, did two things. One, it was before they had vehicles, Amazon Prime. So the salt was there to preserve the fish so that it wouldn't go rotten. And another purpose for salt was to also add flavor to the fish. So when we read this verse of Jesus telling his followers that they are the salt of the earth, it may lose some cultural meaning to us. But what he's really saying is that you are the type of people, disciples, who are here to preserve things and here to add flavor. And so if we don't go into these places and have these conversations and present the truth and add flavor and attempt to preserve goodness, who will? So driving up to the Whatever podcast, I knew that that was my heart for everyone in that room. I know that this was going to be my mission, to be like Jesus, to present both grace and truth, to be the salt of the earth, to ultimately be a vessel to plant seeds and ultimately point people to Jesus. The people in the room
on you, bro.
and the over 5,000 people that were watching live. And that is what led to what I think is this best moment. What Lila said was this beautiful picture of this acceptance in a marriage and also desiring to take care of yourself for your partner, to serve your partner, right? And I've been with my wife 15 years. We've both been overweight. I've been obese. She's had kids. We're in better shape now. We're lean. It's something that's a value of ours. My question would just simply be, it seems like we've all tried all of these things. We've tried all of these ideologies and all these puzzles that we have to piece together. Have you guys ever genuinely considered like trying Jesus, repenting of your sin and really applying God's wisdom?
Yeah, Adam.
For your life. That's not just
Not so
Adam.
much.
I'm genuinely asking. You're Armenian. Our people have a beautiful, rich history. We're the first Armenian nation. We didn't have a written language until we translated the Bible into a written language. We have an amazing, rich, the most persecuted church, right? So like genuinely, like it seems like we've tried all these other things. We've tried doing it our own way. We're trying all this ideology, trying all these, where's the line? And have we genuinely ever looked at the scriptures and considered that maybe Jesus is who he says he is? Maybe he is God. Maybe he's not a liar. Maybe he's not a lunatic. Maybe he's not a good prophet. And genuinely repented of our ways and tried it God's way.
I 1,000% believe in God and Jesus and know all of that.
That wasn't what I asked.
But you don't understand my point of view.
Like, what would happen if all of society actually implemented the wisdom of God? Like, genuine question. If people waited until marriage to have...
Truthfully, you're asking me about religion?
Specifically about Jesus.
About Jesus?
Hedging your faith on the resurrection of
Jesus loves
Jesus.
me. I know that.
And living your life his way.
I'm a man of God. That's all I can
I'm a
say.
woman of
That's all I was
God.
gonna say.
I think I'll just leave it at that.
Personally, I've
does that
done
mean?
quite a bit of research and digging and trying to convince myself that Jesus was a real person or that I should be invested in his teachings. Haven't really been.
If you did any research or reading, you wouldn't need to convince yourself that he was a real person. I mean, you can not believe that he was resurrected if you don't want to believe that, regardless of the witness statements. But you can't deny that he wasn't a real person. Every religion in the world agrees he was a real person. All historians, secular or not, believe he's a real person. So that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
been too convinced. So I'm still kind of waiting to be convinced that this is something I should put my energy into. The vast majority of thinkers that I respect or read or listen to are atheists. So for me personally, it's not really an issue. Like, there's just not enough evidence to me that there's anything of value to offer from Christianity. It's like, realistically, probably the best thing that you could do is like fall in love, get into a relationship with a girl, get married, split your expenses, have a family, etc. once you feel comfortable financially. But like, you know, we just live in a society where we're constantly surrounded by people who are putting on examples of doing the other thing, which is basically like mindlessly chasing and you know, highs and money or whatever for your whole life. And that is kind of like a weird thing that the manosphere has to sort of reckon with, which is that somebody like Andrew Tate being like at the forefront of the manosphere now, it's like you can't really necessarily just be pushing an agenda of like, yo, as many girls as possible, because Andrew Tate is out here saying like, no, that is not going to make you happy in the long run. And anyone who's really being honest with you is going to let you know that's not going to make you happy in the long run.
That was very profound. And I think what we're saying is, statistically speaking, the majority of men and women will have kids. What is the optimal way to build a family? If we're talking about dating, we're talking about relationships, what is the optimal way to cause the most amount of flourishing to the most amount of people? And what has worked through and through all these civilizations? I think that's the crux of what we're getting on. So what you're saying is totally spot on. And it's not red pill, blue pill to me. There's a lot of goofy things from both sides, a lot of nonsense being pushed. But if we're talking about the optimal flourishing environments, because we're all going to eventually have kids, majority of us anyway, how does that look? Listen, I totally understand that these environments are not for everybody. But if you want to see a time where I got to go onto Valuetainment and share the gospel with a different OnlyFans model, check this video out here.
Transgender. It's
What video? All right, interesting stuff. I don't think that was clipped or cut up very well. I don't know if he had limitations on how much of the show that he was able to share. But yeah, to think that Christians shouldn't go to places where whores are to try to convince them not to be whores, that doesn't make any sense at all. That literally makes absolutely zero sense, because that's the whole point. The whole point is to spread the word to sinners so they can stop being sinners.